and this will not be good for our country.
We have more as the opposition urges government to seek relief from the IMF.
We expect the Akufo-Addo government to seek an urgent debt relief from the International Monetary Fund, which can be likened to HIPC. Failure to do so will mean that within 18 months, Ghana will be exposed, which will plunge this country into a deeper economic crisis.
We'll hear from the minority and a reaction from government rejecting these claims. And Top Story is brought to you by Gassam, the Nation Builder, and Vodafone. Together we can. My name is Ernest Manu. Tonight, the minority in Parliament has painted a gloomy picture of the Ghanaian economy, predicting a deeper economic crisis in which the government will not be able to service its debt by February 2023. For them, the only salvation will be a debt relief program from the IMF. Now, ranking member on Parliament's Finance Committee, Dr. Kezola Tuforsen, told a forum in Accra today the country's debt to GDP ratio will in 18 months hit the 85% mark from the current 73%. He says the economy is heading towards a disaster and wants the finance minister to announce immediate measures to stem the tide.
The Ghanaian economy has been driven into the ditch and will require an urgent fiscal measure to pull out from the ditch. We expect the Akufo-Addo government to seek an urgent debt relief from the International Monetary Fund through the newly proposed debt relief initiative known as the Common Framework for Debt Treatment beyond the Debt Service Suspension Initiative, DSSI, which can be likened to HIPC, similar to HIPC, and it's important the government do that. We will also submit that failure by the Akufo-Addo government to do so as recommended will mean that within 18 months from today, Ghana will be exposed to a high risk of default on its debt service obligation, which will plunge this country into a deeper economic crisis. Honorable members, we also wish to recommend to the Akufo-Addo government that they should not wait until disaster strikes and we default on our debt service obligation before taking the necessary action, as this would weaken our position to negotiate favorably. Honorable members, I'm saying 18 months for a reason. 18 months from now will mean we'll be in January, February 2023. At that point, we will know the economic indicators as at December 2022. Evidence points to the fact that if the status quo remains the same, Ghana's public debt will be 85% of GDP. The issues that we are talking about will deteriorate. Ghana will not be attractive to the bond market. We will not be attractive even to domestic market. The cost of paying our debt, even with term loans, will deteriorate. We use chunk of our tax revenue to repay our debt, and this will not be good for our country. And so we are urging that, Mr. President, we mean well. We are lawmakers. We are constituents. We are representative of the people. We have constituency to carry. If Ghana crashes, it doesn't crash with only you. It crashes with all of us.
And so you had there the ranking member of the Finance Committee of Parliament, Dr. Kezola Tuforsen there. Now we're joined in the studio by a former Deputy Communications Minister of the NDC. He speaks also for the former President. Thank you very much, Sir Phyllis Kwachifosu, for joining us in the studio.
My pleasure.
We also have on the phone lines the Deputy Finance Minister, John Kumar. We're grateful for your time here on Top Story, sir.
Thank you very much.
Let me start with you, Mr. Felix Kwachifosu. I mean, recently the IMF had said that the economic outlook of the country is promising, even though it admits that we have fiscal challenges. You're predicting 18 months away. Promising is a lot of hope. What is the basis for this prediction that you're giving us?
Well, let me indicate that the ranking member on Parliament's Committee for Finance, Honorable Dr. Atufosin, did a data-driven analysis of Ghana's economy and pointed out that the two biggest challenges we have are the twin problems of a huge budget deficit, fiscal deficit of 15.2%, and a huge debt overhang that is putting enormous pressure on government's finances. He went ahead to do a detailed analysis of our debt sustainability position. You see, the problem with debt is not necessarily the quantum, but as to whether or not you can repay. If you look at the data, over the last 20 years, it is the Akufo-Addo-Bawumia government that has added the most to our public debt. Indeed, within the first 4 years of their tenure, between 2017 and 2020, they had added as much as 171 billion Ghana cedis to our public debt profile. In dollar terms, that is something around $22 billion. However, if you come to do the debt sustainability analysis, even if you were to set aside our debt to GDP ratio, which stood at 76% as of the end of the fiscal year 2016, there are major problems with our ability to pay. Key indices, such as our public debt to domestic revenue, our public debt to tax ratio, our external debt to export revenue, and other such indicators that allows you to determine as to whether or not you can pay your debts are in dire straits. Let me give you a few figures. For instance, whereas in 2016, one needed 3.8 times our domestic revenue to be able to pay off our domestic debt. That is the component of the debt that is within Ghanaian territory, domestic debts. As of the end of 2020, you needed more than 5 times all the money we collect domestically to be able to pay your domestic debts. Now, if you come to our debt to tax revenue ratio, whereas in 2016, one needed about 4 times all the taxes we collect to be able to pay off our debt. Now, you need more than 6 times of all the taxes we collect to pay off our debt. In absolute terms, for instance, if you check the 2020 budget read by Honorable Osei Sabonso, he said that government expects to collect 72 billion Ghana cedis this year. However, 35 billion has been earmarked to pay interest alone on our debts. Now, that is extremely worrying. I also need to point out that Dr. Atufosin showed that now we need 87% of our tax revenue in order to be able to service our debt. That is pay interest and do amortization. 87%. That means that all the tax revenue that government collects, only 13% of it is available for investment in critical sectors of the economy. This is an unsustainable position. Dr. Atufosin also compared us to our peers, countries in Sub-Saharan Africa and West Africa, and found that we, out of 22 countries, we have the highest budget deficits. In addition to this, we are the most exposed to risk in interest rate movements. That if there's a slight shift in interest rates, we stand the risk of defaulting on our debts. He also showed that out of these 22 countries, we are the ones that have the third highest outstanding payments to make for the Eurobonds that we took over the period, $13.2 billion. However, if you set that against our GDP, we have the highest Eurobond debt to GDP ratio of 17.5%, the highest in Sub-Saharan Africa. Now, this makes our situation extremely dire. But what is worrying is that this government does not appear to have any policies lined up to get us out of this particular situation.
We'll get into the policies, but
Sure.
I listened to you and I noticed you're stressing very much on revenue and expenditure.
Sure.
Before COVID struck, government was doing pretty well. And in fact, when it comes to expenditure, you remember government passed the Fiscal Responsibility Act that put a cap, a 5% cap on the extent to which government could go as far as the deficit was concerned. COVID has had its implications on the economy, and government has said that it admits that COVID has impacted the economy adversely and therefore has put in place measures to correct all these expenditures and budget overruns that we've seen and all the loans that have been contracted in the last few months.
Well, the data suggests otherwise. By December 2016, our debt to GDP ratio was around 63%. It was nearing 70%, the threshold. By December 2019, I beg your pardon. By December 2019, our fiscal deficit was already pointing south. Indeed, in 2016, the fiscal deficit, which Dr. Bamia used to go about criticizing, was 6.3%. By 2019, it had jumped to 7.5%. You see, COVID only worsened a very bad situation. By the time we got to 2019, the economy was already in dire straits. Let me give you one more indicator to illustrate my point. Now, if you look at the amounts we pay in terms of interest and compare it to what we pay or what we spend on capital expenditure, in 2016, we paid 150% of what, or we used 150% of what we used to finance capital expenditure in interest payments. By 2017, it had jumped to 200%. By 2018, it had jumped to 300%. So this shows you clearly that COVID only came to worsen a bad situation. This government has only sought to hide behind COVID in order to create the impression that they were doing something exceptional. That is simply not true. The deficit was going south. Even our growth rate was dropping from the high of 7% in 2017. So the government needs to admit that they have not been candid with the people of Ghana. As I speak to you, I'm sure you are aware that they are not even able to meet their commitments in terms of arrears. Fertilizer suppliers are owed as much as 780 million Ghana cedis since January 2020. Similar debts are owed in the cocoa sector. Indeed, only recently, the Agric minister had to come out and point fingers at the finance minister as the one who has been unable to finance the Planting for Food and Jobs.
And indeed, he did say that the Planting for Food and Jobs program was suffering as a result of finances.
Absolutely.
But hold it there, Mr. Kwachifosu. We have the Deputy Finance Minister on the line, Mr. John Kuma. Thank you very much again for your time here on Top Story. Now, you look at the rating agencies like Fitch, and recently our credit ratings was revised from stable to negative. That is an obvious indication that we have issues when it comes to our debt sustainability. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. Thank you very much, and greetings to your listeners. So let me also take the opportunity to thank Dr. Atoforsin for the policy dialogue he organized and also the kind invitation he extended to the Honorable Minister for Finance. But beyond that, I disagree with so many of the things that they have raised, and we are going to put it in context. For instance, they tend to create a gloomy picture about the economy, but far from it, because at the moment as we speak, Ghana has attained the highest production of cocoa in the history of our cocoa production. And if you check the strength of our economy, anytime Ghana does well in cocoa production, it results in higher performance of our GDP. In all these discussions, you can see that the NDC is shying away from the mentioning of the GDP and how the economy is doing well. They're only talking about debt, but I'll come to the debt matter. The IMF that they reference, IMF in its latest board meeting in July, commended Ghana for the efficient management of the economy and most in particular how we handle the COVID situation, and expressed optimism that Ghana will definitely bounce back in no time.
But the same IMF has admitted that we have fiscal challenges.
Oh, yes. I'll come to that. I told you I'll come to that. Fitch Solution, as you just cited them, has also stated that Ghana is the fastest growing economy in the sub-region right now as we speak.
But Fitch has also downgraded our our credit ratings from
It
stable
means they have
to negative.
downgraded others more than they have done to Ghana. So what it means is that Ghana is doing better compared to others. But you see, let me come to the reality of the world where we are right now. In 2017 to 2020, we saw how Ghana was doing so well until COVID struck. And globally, as we speak, last year, America had to create 1.93 trillion COVID stimulus bill to support their economy. It's not just a Ghana situation. Every economy is adding on to its debt, okay? In the West African sub-region, the average debt rate across the countries in Africa, in West Africa sub-region, was about 35%. Just within 1 year, only in 2020, it jumped to 55%. So it is general. And then the NDC is saying that in 18 months, Ghana is going back to the IMF. That, for me, was the lowest point of all their recommendations that they made. I can assure them that for the bad management that they left this economy, you remember the widened budget and current deficit that they left this country, the increased inflation, about 15% they left it, limited fiscal space that they left in 2016, the distressed financial sector that they left for us, the reduction in credit and increase in interest rates that they left, the non-performing loans in the banks, the increased spending on public sector wages, and several others. They had to run to the IMF. You remember, for external credit facility in April 2015 for 980 million. Let the NDC remember that it took the MPP government in 2017 less than 18 months to bring Ghana out of that shackle. And we are out of the IMF and all the conditionalities. Today, we are issuing financial clearance for the youth to get jobs. So we are not going back in 18 months. I want to agree with the NDC that is true. We have gone back to high debt levels because COVID struck. And when COVID came, it was a matter of everybody trying to keep their people safe. And if you remember, His Excellency the President said that he doesn't know how to bring back life, but he knows how to bring back the economy. And indeed, he has worked hard to preserve this country, and now we are working hard to bring back the economy. If you check, in the first quarter of this year, the economy has already grown 3.1%, and it's looking positive. The 18 months the NDC is talking about, we are going to use the 18 months ahead of Ghana to restore Ghana to its positive fiscal indicators that we already know how this economy runs. So clearly,
I'm wondering what value we can put on that. If the NDC
wants to challenge figures, I want us to look on even on the debt. Let's come to the debt. Between 2012 and 2016, what was the primary balances of the country? The primary balance is the indicative of government's net debt accumulation. It shows how the overall debt accumulation of the country is. They should tell us. They consistently posted negative primary balance until they lost power in 2016 with a negative balance of 1.4. Check the record from 2017 till today. Ghana always, His Excellency President Akufo-Addo government posted positive primary balance on only in 2020 when COVID came that we posted a negative primary balance, by which everybody understands that COVID is an exceptional outlier situation.
On the issue of debt sustainability, which they raise, again, I go back to Fitch because today they have issued a report that says that 2 banks here in Ghana that had invested so much in government securities, they've had their outlook, their credit ratings downgraded. That is a signal of what the minority is saying, isn't it?
No, I am not disproving that we are in a difficult situation, but I'm saying that this situation has come about because of COVID. And this was not the fiscal indicators of Ghana before the COVID. And even in our present circumstances where they have downgraded us as negative, they are the same people commending Ghana as compared to the global economy Ghana economy is the fastest growing in the sub-region. It's the same rich people who are saying that.
I want you to hold on for me, Dr. Kuma. We'll come back to look at the measures you are putting in place to deal with these economic issues and how they're going so far. We know that the Obata Cares program has been launched. The finance minister will be in Parliament on Thursday for the mid-year budget review. We'll come to all of that. But Mr. Kwachifoso is still with me in the studio. You heard him clearly say that these are issues that have been brought on us as a result of COVID.
I showed you in my submission before he came on board that cannot be true. You see, there are about 18 indicators that are used to assess the health of the economy. Not all of them have the same value. There are some of them that have direct impacts on how your citizens fare in terms of their economic well-being. The key ones amongst them are the deficit and your debt. The reason why it affects you is that government has raked up a huge budget deficit, which started worsening in 2018. The deficit of 2018 was 7%. It was higher than that of 2016. The deficit of 2019 was 7.5%, higher than that of 2016. And in 2020, they raked up 15.2%. Again, because they have to use 87% of tax revenue to service our debt, pay interest and amortization alone, they have very little else left to do anything. And that is the reason why they have raised taxes and imposed several taxes, which have translated into a dwindling of the disposable income of the average Ghanaian. So
let me ask you,
again,
you had the finance minister this year when he gave us some details on how much they're investing in various sectors of the economy as far as the Ghana Cares program is concerned. What is your confidence in that program to drive the economic recovery that COVID,
it is empty rhetoric to the extent.
How is that?
Why? They came reciting one district, one dam. Where is it now? They promised that they will give every constituency $1 million. Where is it now? PMFG is on its knees, according to the Agric Minister. So they have to move away from this empty sloganeering and bring on board measures that will address them. What exactly is their plan in terms of our debt sustainability? When Dr. Atufortin said that they will be going back, or they should go to the IMF for debt relief, otherwise in 18 months we may default, John Kuma is disputing it. Meanwhile, the president of Ghana went cap in arm to France to beg for debt relief. Why was he begging for debt relief at the conference held in France if it was not impinging adversely on our economy? What will happen is that we will get to a point where we will not be able to pay our debt because the debt keeps rising. And the debt is extremely important because you have to service it. You don't just take debt and sit. You have to pay. To pay, you need to find revenue. That revenue is not forthcoming. Again, they also make the mistake of comparing us to the UK. I heard him say that other countries or the US has made $1.9 trillion in terms of some payments or COVID borrowing. But the difference between us and the US is that even though they may have a debt to GDP ratio of 99%, they have a tax to GDP ratio of 25%. In other words, they are able to raise more revenue to service their debt in a way that you are unable to do. So these are not matters that we should trifle with. These are not matters that can be swept under the carpet with sloganeering.
The finance minister on Thursday will be in Parliament for the mid-year budget review. Beyond the issue of running to the IMF, what are some of the things you expect government to announce that you believe would help in the economic recovery that you are
our expenditures to our revenue? There's also too much emphasis on populism and consumption-related expenditure. If you look at some of the graphs that Dr. Atufortin presented today, you would find that whereas our economy was not performing at optimal level, they kept on spending in a manner that was reckless on expenditure that was not critical. They kept on spending on consumption when they should be spending on capital investments, some of which can pay for themselves. So their entire trajectory is wrong. Their entire approach to economic management is wrong. And that is what has led us to the situation that we are in. And I must add that this discussion is being held on the back of commitments that they made when they were in opposition. You recall, on page 13 of their 2016 manifesto, the one that brought them to power, they promised to reduce borrowing. Yet they have come into power and added over 200 billion Ghana cedis to our debt. It is not something that we can go through.
Well, the vice president has said that these are smart borrowings. You know that
Let me show you what smart borrowing is. President Mahama ensured that the Ghana Airport Company took a loan of almost $300 million to build Terminal 3, which can pay for itself. We built the University of Ghana Medical Center, which can pay for itself. We built Ridge, which can pay for itself. Show me one critical investment that the Akufo-Addo government has made that can pay for itself. For which reason they can describe their borrowing as smart. Indeed, until recently, they even claimed that they were borrowing to finance free SHS. Any government that borrows to finance recurrent expenditure does not know anything about economic management. And
But you've
therefore,
seen the rate at which they've secured some of the bonds that we've seen in the last few years. Hold the line for me. The finance minister, deputy finance minister, is still with us on the line. On Thursday, what can we expect as far as some of the issues that you admit are crucial issues that the opposition has raised? What are some of the things we can expect the finance minister to announce to address them?
Most of the concerns that have been raised will be addressed in the mid-year budget, I can assure you. I can tell you that if the NDC diagnosis of the problem is the fact that we are not able to generate enough revenue to meet up our expenditure like other countries are doing, then the answer does not rest with IMF. I'm surprised that in all their suggestions that they can make, they are looking up to going to IMF to address our problems. It shows how lack of innovation they think about the economy of Ghana. We are not going to IMF. We should. The president asked for relief from international community on the IMF platform because of COVID. We all know that COVID is a global problem that has affected everybody, including the rich nations of the world. So if the less endowed countries of the world are asking for debt relief on the basis of COVID, you should put it in context. But that is not to say that we are going to run to IMF to seek for what the NDC will call policy credibility and that kind of thing. We are focused on redeeming the economy and putting it on paths of revitalization. I'm happy you have spoken about the Obatampa case, which is 100 billion cedis project that His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo has programmed to revitalize the economy and revive the economy back to strong figures. So clearly, yes, there are difficulties we acknowledge, and we know that these difficulties are there as a result of the COVID that we all face.
Very well, Doc. And we look forward to what will happen on Thursday. Some of the measures that will be announced by the finance minister to address the issues being raised by the opposition NDC, to which you admit. Thank you very much for your time here on Top Story. Let's go on to the other line now and speak to Professor Eric Osei-Sibe. He's an Associate Professor of Economics and Dean of International Programs at the University of Ghana. Prof, we are grateful you could join us here on Top Story. 18 months, the NDC says, if government does not take pragmatic steps, the country will be headed for deeper economic crisis. Is this a realistic prediction?
Well, I will not say yes, it is. Of course, there's a high risk of our capacity to repay our debts because it's been increasing. We've recorded about 53% of our tax revenue as debt and paying debts. And so there's a risk to that. But I don't think we are there yet. We are in a high risk of debt distress. But the country still demonstrates high capacity to repay its loan. I mean, as IMF itself put it recently, that the debt situation, although it's high, it's manageable and also has shown a great capacity to repay the fund. So the payments, as it stands now, I mean, I don't think we have defaulted in any way. And so we have to manage our debts. It is growing. It's a concern. All meaning Ghanaians, Research Institute, and regional bodies have all expressed concern. But it's not unique to Ghana. We all know the COVID, the shock that the COVID brought to the world. Before then, too, this country has gone through some shocks. We've gone through the energy shock, we look at the off-budget financing of energy, the contingent liabilities that have been recorded within the energy sector, the legacy debts. We've seen the financial sector cleanup, which also recorded substantial debts, and then been aggravated by the COVID shock, which really had a very severe impact on the economy. So putting the three together, it is not too surprising that we've had a very huge debt overhang at this time. But As to whether we'll have to run to the IMF, I don't think so, because the fundamentals as it stands now does not provide enough support for that.
Do you
Before you
think
go
we
to
are
the
in a position?
IMF, one of the key indicators is your reserve buffer, your international reserve. And currently, as you look, we have accumulated enough international reserve, I think more than 10 billion cedis or so. Currency has been relatively stable over the crisis period. And even we've had inflation going down and interest rates trending downward. So the indicators that would have forced us to go into the IMF really is moving into a positive direction, except with the debt to GDP ratio, which is rising in our debt servicing. But as the country or as the economy has shown some positive signs of recovery, I think that it gives comfort that over a period of time, as we come in on the path of recovery, we will be able to generate enough revenue. The base would be expanded, and we would come back to a sustainable position. So,
very briefly on this,
yes, but I don't think we are there yet.
Yes, very briefly on this. Given the current situation, do you think that we have the capacity, we are in the position to secure some more credit facilities? And would you be surprised if the finance minister announces anything in that regard come Thursday?
Ernest, your line is faint, but if I could hear you, whether we will have to go to another, to raise another bond, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm talking about credit facilities generally.
Yes, of course. I have said that perhaps the time has come that we change gear a bit, that we do not have to over-focus on the private and commercial loans at this time, because the external financing condition now is not that favorable, given that interest rates and inflation has started trending upward. We are not likely to get favorable returns or yield. That could really not be good for us. So I think that there's global advocacy for debt suspension and debt relief. And so I think our focus now should be geared towards more concessionary, grant-based kind of loan to try to reduce the interest cost, which is growing too high, and it can really crowd out government's ability to spend on some critical sectors of the economy.
Prof, I want to thank you very much for your time. That is Professor Eric Esibe, economist at the University of Ghana. That's it for Top Story, brought to you by Gassam, the Nation Builder, and Vodafone. Together we can. Newsnight starts right now.